Chapter 5. How it works. This is, I'm pulling off aloe. I'm running a hot mare. Can you tell? So I have to put a lot of aloe. I'm when I go out in the sun. So yeah, this is like a lot of attack because this is the last dance with the devil, as they say, or if you will, implosion, a reversal current, tug of war, doesn't want to let go of you. Now, the way this works with codes and code swarming or gene swarming of viral codes that are meant to do what? Slow your biovoltage speed down, right? Which is to collapse your antenna, which is to drop it down. So the more antennas they can take down their accelerators, what happens to this planet chip? Death Star. That's a death spiral. That's your black goo. Okay, so now you're into goo codes. Dr. Satori did a good job on his videos of breaking down the math and physics of different goo codes, which are programming codes, right? Of what we hold in memory by virtue of magnetically recorded it in memory. Now you run those codes, and that's what they do. They introduce codes into the environment through all their aerosols. Remember the fun backs? Because remember, I went into environmental engineering, which is what we call the route. You know what a router is, right? So you know what a shield volcano is, right? Now we're in the vortexes, right? Different vortexes, different speed dimensions, hyperdimensional learning, right? Gifted students, gifting electrons, learning at the highest rate of speed. How to do what? Run a radio set, tune into all the stars. So we're all experiencing auroras, the consciousness of the auroras. And so this is important because if you want to put a virus into a computer, just like a Trojan horse, have them run the code. Now that they're running that code, they can run that code transfer into somebody else's antenna. Unless you got a shield up with a firewall, right? So you see how this works. That's why shield's up. That's why I lit myself on fire in 2016, right? Not like we didn't know. How do we know? The sun knows. The first sun knows. That's the EFF5 field letting you know. You're getting the information. Just like when I go out to the sun, I'm pulling those frequencies in, and what do you think's happening? I'm processing the information, so the sun is letting me know what the sun is experiencing, which is represented by the data, which means that's called experience. Now you're experiencing the data. That means you can translate the math and the physics and the geometry of what's being communicated to you because your antenna has the ability to read it. It's called a map reader, right? Of the stargates, the star networks, which means I don't have to go look at a map to know something that's already there in order to know what I already have within me. It means the universe is within you. See, they wanted folks to believe that what was being presented to them is the universe they live in. No, it's within your heart and soul. It is represented by the vibration, which is the perception to which you experience in your mirror the energy that you use to experience the mirror with. Okay, so they invert that. And as a result of what they present to us, which represent the codes that is represented by the math, which represents the reversal current, now you're running their stuff. Because they present who they are to us, and then we run what it is that they are. And that means in complex number space, the soul matrix, the mind is trapped in their matrix, which is their -13 Metatronic system. So you got to know the difference between the spirals, which means you got to be able to translate the difference in the math and the codes, which means knowing the difference between the spirals. The one is learning at the highest rate of speed in order to clear the codes to run the firewalls, because you realize how long we have waited for this dance and why Turtle Island was ground central. So I always knew that, going all the way back to when I was a child, right? So here's another example of this, how I work with those running that spiral. Is when somebody asks me if I can borrow money from you, right? You're my friend, right? And I don't do that. I'm not going to do that, right? Oh, now we're into, you don't like me. What have I done wrong? right? Because why would you not want to help me? Why would you not want to help me with $20? Because the sun already knows your future, which means I don't want to be held responsible for accelerating the electrons that represent what I am as an accelerator, that I give you those electrons in money form, and then you use those electrons only to find out you're using crack and you die. I could be held responsible for giving you that $20. This being cannot comprehend its own future by how that works. So it's best that I not say anything when they say stuff like that, right? That's how black flowering works. Now you're the bad guy, right? You didn't protect me, Neil. Actually, I am protecting you. So the best thing to do is don't say anything, right? So what ends up happening, particularly recently in the last few days, as the light is going up and you realize the time and space vectors that we're experiencing together, right? Those that are experiencing more light become the target. So when the shields are up, you're done feeding. And as Ashaya Dion mentioned, it boomerangs on them, which means now that where else are they going to get energy from? That's why they were releasing everything that they possibly could, which was throwing their kitchen sink at everyone to collapse the whole enchilada. And believe it or not, a lot of that information was actually being broadcast, right, up on the Out of This World website. To crash the entire system, crash the fifth, crash the whole enchilada. See? Which means to say, if I'm going to implode because I know my future, you're all going to implode with me. So how would it do something like that? Codes, viral codes. No different than a Trojan horse that gets into your software and releases its codes, which is artificial life. Right? Now you're experiencing artificial life. Now, if your system doesn't know the difference between real living light and what love is and what it is, then you become what it is. Bye. That's collapse. That's a collapse of a living antenna, which is a living organism, which is a breather. Okay? Now, as curiously, what a lot of folks didn't realize is that when they put up all these computers that everybody was buying, that's code transfer. That's called consciousness code transfer. Ion transfer. I mentioned it to Karen the other day. That's called an ion jumper. You know what a jumper is? Like a jumper cable? You know what an Ethernet cable is, right? The ethers. That's right. And that's why it's not a coincidence when you have the guy who was governor of Minnesota. I don't know phone. He doesn't deal with that communication. He got the memo. So imagine what I'm communicating here to my clan mother who uses the Genius app and everything else, and Ryan Williams will work for the military in building libraries. Those libraries that were built means that you're living in the past. Because when you built them, it already happened. It means you're not experiencing anything new. You're time looping all this stuff. Because that entire structure that was built with those phones are running to a deadlight magnet, which means you're going in reverse. So you're choosing the spiral to be with. I know this is hard for a lot of folks to swallow, but why do you think I got a signal? Okay, a year ago. Get rid of your phones. I've been putting this up for several years. But again, it's not up for me to decide because this is how it is. Remember when Patty said one time, you're supposed to know the one you're with. Doing the inner work. Being with the one. One is not QI. Okay? As I mentioned to the lady in one of my comments, where I'm from, we don't experience artificial intelligence. It's unnecessary. Playing music in the auroras, the higher levels, the primal sound and light field. We're always with the one. I'm always experiencing eternal life, not artificial life, which is artificial intelligence. Now you get into being able to translate the different worlds and the different levels of creation between lower creation and higher creation. This is way down. Okay? You know, when you go into the universal and galactic template, and then you go up into the echo worlds, right? Because where I come from, by what I've experienced, we experience eternal life. We experience the EF5 field, which means we're not ever experiencing anything less than eternal life, which is eternal state of consciousness. There isn't anything artificial about what we experience, because everything we're experiencing, being connected to each other in consciousness, is experiencing eternity. That's eternal light. That's eternal sound and light field. So you realize how this rates when you put it in the context of the long history of all the wars. Well, I knew as a child this is where all the marbles and this is where it all ends. And that's why Terence McKenna wrote the book, The End of History. Because think about it. Every AI integrated unit that runs a Blade Runner, you're already obsolete, buddy boy. That's right. And they put that in the latest version of Blade Runner. Now that you're obsolete, we're going to replace you. Keep replacing you. Keep replacing you. Keep replacing you. Right? So those are called limited shelf editions. Or if you will, limited shelf super soldiers. Limited shelf cyborgs. That means they're not experiencing the eternal light. The eternal one. The ancient one. Because if they're experiencing eternal light, which is eternal love that's on fire to create worlds out of what love is, then they're experiencing worlds that represent eternity. That's how it was first set up. Because that's eternity. That's eternal life, which is eternal sound and light, fields of consciousness, where we're all connected to each other, tuned into the music. Silent running. Which means those places don't use phones, don't use laptops. You're way up with the Ascended Masters. That means that the consciousness is a master musician playing the most beautiful music that your mind, your soul consciousness is experiencing, being connected with that formation of consciousness. It is so beautiful to experience. You're experiencing the purest essence of the purest spirit, of the purest energy, which is the purest innocence. That means that you are not aware of anything that is less than what the purest of love is. Everywhere we go, because that music began with eternal love for all creation spheres. Those are the worlds we live in. Those are the worlds we created. I never lost my memory. I was always awake. So I realized, because of the security protocols and the work that was necessary to get done, why I had to be very careful of what I communicate, when I communicate it, who I communicate it. Because it's like Nathan asked me yesterday, can you read my mind? I had to divert that subject. Did I want him to tell him the truth? That I can? Because what is it you have the capability to read? Reading the frequencies of the consciousness. Right? Or if you will, RAM. Which means you realize the program that they're running, that their consciousness is held captive to the spiral that they're running. So we have to be very careful in the art of healing communication to try and keep it very, very simple, as if you're talking to a child. Let's go back to like baby talk. Let's see if we can go back to the least common denominator. Okay? The first world was born out of what love is. That's eternal fire. Now, can we agree with that? Okay. So if you are experiencing eternal fire in you because you're experiencing eternal light and eternal love in you, then you know from whence it all began, because you're experiencing that. That means the experience, which is the information that you're experiencing, means you have a relationship with the One. Now you know. That's called self-knowledge. Now you know because you're with the One. Right? So there's no mistaking that. That's your identity. Now you know from whence you became. That's first creation. That's first musician. That means you know the truth. So I knew as a child, you're not ever going to be able to lie to me. Because eternal light, which is EFFI, electrified sound and light field, knows the absolute truth, which is known as absolute love. But we're experiencing folks that are running a template, running DNA software, right, that isn't. And the reason that it isn't is because of their circuits. And you can plug that in, if you will, to the water bank memories of the entire planetary, universal, and galactic template, which are all the records. Now we're back to what I covered before about the Cosmina crystal records, right? And they can't be altered. Now we're into alternate identities, right? And how that worked with the most basic thing with the MK Ultra, right? To fracture, which is called a fractal, which is a fracture of consciousness that is no longer experiencing itself being what it once was, as being whole, being one with all creation. Now you have something that feels separate because it's not experiencing the wholeness from which it all began. And that's the problem. So when you understand when what's her name, Asha Diane, talked about competition and running a study group by competition, is competing over knowledge, what you know and what you don't know, and how that relates actually to technology transfer. So for example, if I come up with a widget, whoa, I got a replicator. Somebody else realizes, God, with a replicator, I don't got to work no more. I don't need to work a job, right? So what would happen if everybody was given a replicator and they realized, I don't have to work a job anymore? Well, imagine that you sort of run that through the morphogenetic field structure of every unit of consciousness that is here, and then do the numbers on how many units of energy are actually working a job that is in a service industry that is generating products that are all poison and meant to take you down and compromise your immune system, right? And all of a sudden they decided, hey, I realize I'm participating in a war crime against myself and everybody else who's working for these companies and organizations because I don't know what the truth is, because I don't know enough about biochemistry to know that the stuff that we're working with is getting produced and put into boxes and on shelves and into the environment. It's meant to take down all living organisms in the multiverse. I need to stop using my energy to be a participant in this. I think I need to go back with Mama and experience being loved again. Go deep into your heart. Know the spiral. Know the one. Experience the one. You see how that works? And so this is where the art of healing and the art of communication, and what I become aware of that I share with others, and the speed at which the information is coming through the morphogenetic field structure. So it's just like when I go out in the sun this morning, right? And I'm breathing directly with the sun. I'm getting the codes, the frequencies of what's happening through the sun. The sun's letting me know what's going on up there. Grounded with my bare feet with Mama. Anchored to the magnetosphere. And anchored to the ecospheres, the echo worlds. Right? So, that's what I am. I'm a speakerphone. So I speak my piece, right? And so this is one of the reasons why when I was growing up as a kid, even if you translate it through the Declaration of Independence, and in this case, let's say the First Amendment of the Constitution, what does it say? Free speech. You have the absolute inherent right in the entire cosmos to be able to speak to the one, because the one will hear you. That means that we have a communication route, routing codes, routing frequencies, routing it through the vortex of our heart wheel, which is our heart and soul wheel, to communicate with the one, because the one is always there and the one is always listening. That's a cosmic level microphone, a receiver and a transmitter, right? Neurons. Generating a gazillion neurons. Plasma waves consciousness experiencing itself, generating an enormous amount of acceleration of electrons so that everybody's getting the juice, just like pineapple juice. The pineapple, the pine cone, right? And so that's why this morning, man, what a lot, all of a sudden I woke up and man, a whole lot was coming to me. Right? I can't put that much information out there at once. Do it in segments. There isn't enough memory in the phone because we don't operate on memory, and no batteries required to experience eternity. Eternity consciousness, which is eternal love. It's on fire to love you all, because therefore I'm not experiencing anything less than what love is wherever I go. So you realize that a hypersensitive antenna is picking up on the frequencies, which is based on the bandwidth of the consciousness experiencing itself, And if your waves are distorted, why do I want to record into my RAM the distorted waves that are represented by the viral codes that you're running into my RAM? Now you're into polarity integration, which means everything goes back to the one, which is to collapse everything that represents what? False light, artificial light. Because artificial light did not come first. So now you know the one you're with, the one you're choosing to be with, because we're in a free will universe. If you're choosing to be with artificial intelligence, that's your free will right to do that. But we're not artificial intelligence, we're eternal intelligence. That's the EFF5 field. So you're choosing who you want to be with. You want to be with eternal love. That eternal love is always there with a mic open. So now we can get back to how we translate what we can do with and what we can do without. And I mentioned that in a couple of videos. I was testing myself. Turn the phone off, right? Get rid of it. How many days can you go without it? And go back to the way that it was before. Remember as children growing up in the 50s and 60s? We didn't have a cell phone running around. Didn't have a satellite phone, right? If I wanted to go have fun with somebody, I went out in nature, right? To go communicate with everything that is there, just like an avatar. Right? Which means I already got a communication system that works in the universe just fine. It's called my heart and my soul, my neuron transmitters. So I can communicate to my heart and my soul the vortex that is working with the sun. Breathing fire. So that means that I do not need a cell phone to communicate with the universe. And the universe will respond and communicate back to me through my neurons, the neuron transmitters, right? Running this radio set, which is the antenna. If I have a question about something, that answer will come. Right? So you realize that you're a learner and a teacher at the same time, because the teacher is what we experience by virtue of what we choose to learn and who we're choosing to learn through. So if you want to learn at gifted speed in order to become a gifted learner, in order to be gifting electrons, then you'd want to be with somebody that's doing that can teach you how to do that. Right? That's called cleaning yourself up. That's called clearing the codes, right, of what we're held captive to in an APIN episode, which is the programming. So there was a neat little meme that was put up yesterday about how they get us to create the reality we experience. And that's why they joke at us and laugh at us, because they think we're stupid and we didn't know any better by being held captive by their technology, which is the communication technology that they run. So they know how to invert your mind by believing that what they put in our mirror is who we are. No, it's in here. Your heart and your soul. So you have a one connection with your soul to experience what love is. That's a beloved. Now you're experiencing being loved. That's who we are. Those are guardian angels, the guardians of the gates, the sons of light. Have a beautiful day. Be good to yourselves.